on to the Edel Golf podcast. This is the very first one, so we thought that we would sit down. We're here in the workshop in Austin, Texas with David. Just talk about like how we got here today, right? Where you have this huge shop, you have all these clubs getting made, these awesome, everything from single length irons to a new putter line.
How did it start?
How did it start? Take us back. The first club you ever made, what was that?
Wow, back on the Oregon coast, I was teaching full time, living in South America and then Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and moving back and forth, following the sun, and joined the family business. We were in the hotel business, and got kind of difficult traveling a lot, and I had a kid on the way, and so decided to join the family business, and it was not for me. I knew it, but I got kind of locked into it, and so I said, what can I do that kept me in the game? I was a PGA professional, and I said, I'm going to build a putter, because that's what always held me back. I wanted to make my own putters. So funny thing is what kind of got me into making my own putter was I started making belt buckles out of silver, and was using carving wax and trying to do something like that. And I said, wow, I can make something. And so I carved a putter out of carving wax, and then we made a sandcast mold and then poured silver. So my very first putter was pure silver.
Wow.
Yeah, and then
You still have it somewhere?
Oh yeah. I had, and then I had an old guy in town. He had a little Harbor Freight milling machine. I went over to his shop and we milled the face, and then I wanted to do something a little unique to it by milling a pocket, and then I put a soft rubberized, insert in it. And so my first putter was a combination of silver and it was pretty interesting. It was pretty cool. It looks ugly as hell now that I look at it, but I was pretty proud of it when I made it. And then I realized that wasn't the way to go. It was too soft, and it just, in time I knew it was going to end up becoming pretty expensive, because silver was going up and down in price. So, and I met another designer, putter designer, and I asked him what material he would make a putter out of, and he said stainless steel. And I said, why don't you make it? And he goes, it's just too expensive. So I go, oh, there's my opportunity to build a putter out of pure stainless instead of carbon steel and plating it. So so it just kind of evolved. I had another machinist in my local town, so I had him design some designs for me, and I designed them, and then he helped mill them in his milling machines, and that was pretty expensive, and I basically made no money on any putter I made, because I knew I could get the price down, but he was charging me a certain amount, and I didn't want to I wasn't at the time, didn't have the confidence to go charge $350 or something for a putter, so I sold them all at a loss. But it was never really about the money. It was just about getting somebody to buy my. I was so proud. The first person that bought one of my putters was. I was like, wow, you're the first. It was pretty cool.
So you were a golfer before that. Did you start playing as a young kid? Or?
Yeah, well, sort of. My dad grew up in Monterey, Pebble Beach, caddied at Cypress, and Monterey Peninsula Country Club, Pebble Beach. Was a really good player, went on a golf scholarship, and so golf was always around me. We'd go visit my grandparents. They lived on a golf course in Carmel Valley, and my dad played on the weekends, but it was I never really took it up. It wasn't something I got really serious about until but I'd always watch like the British Open, the US Open with my dad, and I remember the old Jim McKay, all that stuff, and it was so I had this like interest in it, but I got, we moved to Oregon when I was 10, and I got into all the, the manly sports. I had to play basketball, football, and track, and then I wrecked my right elbow playing around, messing around in track and field of all things, and dislocated my elbow and had 3 surgeries on my elbow, and I couldn't really play football. I couldn't play basketball anymore, and I went and visited my grandparents in Carmel that summer. I was 15, just turned 15, and I started hitting balls in their backyard, which was a golf course, and I hit a few shots and was like, oh my God, and the next hole next to their house was a long par 3, and I pulled out a 3-wood and smoked one up there, and I was just like, wow. I want to play golf. So that's kind of what got me in. And I came home that summer and I said to my dad, you know, I want to play golf. And he said, you do? And so we joined our little 9-hole golf course in Reedsport, Oregon, and I couldn't do anything else. My mind went 100% to be a golfer, and I got to play golf with my dad. It was kind of a neat bonding thing. And I got pretty good pretty quick. Competed at a fairly high level, and wasn't all that great, you know, as compared to a lot of the better amateurs in the state. But I mean, I did pretty well. And then I went to college and just kept working on it. I couldn't afford to play on the team.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to the University of Oregon. Okay. You know, we weren't making money back in the day, and so I put my way through college and worked on golf courses. So my freshman year, I kind of took off. I didn't really play golf much, but worked that whole summer. And then next thing I know, I'm like all in it, working at golf courses, and then pretty soon I had 3 jobs in the golf industry. I worked at a place called Fiddler's Green, which was, at the time, was the largest on-course golf shop in the world. And I was a cart guy, pro shop guy, and I worked on the greens crew, mowing greens in the mornings before class. So it was a lot of work, but you know, I love what I was doing. I just love golf, and then I turned professional after coming out of college, and that became my focus 100%.
Why do you think you loved golf? Like, why was it something you had 3 jobs at a course and you know, were there all day long? Like, that takes.
That's a good question. I think it's a cool life, you know, to do something you love. And a lot of people, you know, they say if you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. And I got into teaching, which I think if I was forced to just be in a golf shop and run a golf operation, I don't know if I'd been as happy as if I was teaching. It showed me the world. I just love helping and making people better. It sounds like a cliche, but really, I really enjoyed, you know, I started late in life, so I didn't take it for granted, the growth that I had. And when those light bulbs went off, it was massive for me. It was like, wow. And people, you know, I could see somebody playing golf for 20 years and you're like, this is as good as you got. Wow, you need help, you know? It's like, and you're like, wow, I could really provide a value. And so I was fortunate, you know, and my grandfather's course was a famous teacher named Ben Doyle, and he was a golf machine instructor. He was the first one. He was kind of a legend in instruction around the world, and so that became my first golf mentor, and it really set things and wheels in motion that I could be, you know, over time, if I kept working really hard at this, I could be one of the best in the world at it. And you know, I'm still working at it, so still learning.
What age was he your instructor growing up then? Ben Doyle then?
No,
I
didn't. It wasn't until I had left college and after my first job. I went down and spent 5 months just at his side watching him teach and caddying at Pebble Beach and Spyglass and Spanish Bay and working with Ben. And then
what'd you learn from him? What are the biggest things that you learned?
How to compress a golf ball. You know, I played golf, but I didn't understand how to compress a golf ball. And I saw how you could work as hard as he did and develop passion in people. It was amazing. People came from all over the world, and he worked harder than anybody. And subsequently, he reminds me a lot of my best friend, Mike Adams. The guy never stops. He just keeps, and most importantly, you know, those mentors of mine, like Mike Adams, they gave everything to their student, right? Randy Henry, the same thing, is one of my mentors. Learned so much from Randy. He gives everything to the student, you know, and they don't hold back, and they're not afraid of not giving out their information. So that's where I'm at.
I mean, it's a cool perspective though, because I would assume most people that are designing and building golf clubs don't have a background in teaching, and so I think it's a cool perspective that you were trying to help people get better, and then you started making clubs to try to make people get better, and it just that has always stayed the same.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of mechanical engineers don't have much of a golf background in the industry. Some do, and the good ones do, and a lot of them are really good at, and they've played the game and they play it kind of as a hobby. but not many of them were teachers. And I saw that I could create a vertically integrated process, which is difficult to do. Usually everything's segmented. You got, guy teaches or gal teaches, the club manufacturer makes golf equipment, and then there's this disconnect between the teaching realm, the fitting realm, the manufacturing realm. And I thought, wow, I have a really huge opportunity here to create a model that works from education right through the manufacturer to the product, and then the customer service thereafter. So, and quite honestly, I think I'm one of the only golf professionals, or the only golf professional to have done, PGA professional to have done what I've done in the golf industry, where I've actually created my own brand, and it still survives, and and it's not just, I'm not just a putter guy. I became a wedge guy. I became a single length iron maker. So it's not just me physically sticking to one little thing. It's like if I see something I can change, I'm going to go try to change it, make it better, and improve upon it.
So the first people that bought your putters when you were selling them at a loss back when you first started, were those your students then that you were like, hey, you gotta try this?
Well, at the time, no. The funny thing is I was making a putter for people to buy back then when I first started in 1996. Make a putter, make a few shapes. I had a kind of a unique way to put a hosel on a head, because that was the only way. I didn't have a lot of the tools that a lot of these big OEMs had. And then I started, thinking about, wow, it's got to be something that has sustenance. Me just trying to make another putter, which I could have got away with at the time, because that's all people did. Scotty Cameron wasn't what he is today. Tiger Woods wasn't known to play his putter back in that time period. And so, I kind of started. He was obviously ahead of me in the process and companies that he'd worked for, but making handmade putters was kind of still a boutique art form back in the day. There weren't many people. There were Tad Morris and T.P. Mills and Scotty Cameron, and that was about it. Byron Morgan maybe, Kevin Burns. There's real small little boutique groups, and I said, well, I'm just going to try to be the best I can be at doing this, and then it evolved into, well, I'm a golf professional, and what's missing? There's things missing. There's got to be a better process. We just can't, make one putter and expect people to buy it and make it work for everyone. And then, so it evolved into what, arguably is the greatest fitting system ever put together. I mean, there's nothing like it in the world, and still nobody's wants to even do it, because it's pretty complicated and no one's really gone there. It's just a lot of people just don't know about it. I wish that's the purpose of this, is for people to understand, that there is a better way. There is something, inherently unique to all of us that that we need to come to terms with. If you want to be a better putter, there's a process to do that.
So maybe just to paint a picture for people, your fitting system, you fit to aim, because most of us don't actually aim at the hole. If you threw a laser down, you'd see that. You fit for speed and get the weight and all the different factors. You fit all that. So before you have the current system, what was the first iteration, or when did that even cross your mind of like, hey, I should figure out if people are aiming at the hole and start to come up with a fitting system?
Well, it was when the laser first came out. It was actually, I remember Chuck Hogan, who was a mental guy back in the day, worked with Peter Jacobson and a lot of Raymond Floyd, and worked with a lot of guys, and he brought the aim concept to my understanding initially, but it was like, where do you aim? It wasn't like, oh, this will do this, and it kind of started with Henry Griffiths and a gal named Chris Aoki. She had one of her students had brought it to her attention, the fact that different shapes and things like that created aim scenarios. And then at Henry Griffiths, I was making putters, and I said, well, hey, what are you doing? What are you up to? And I said, well, I'm making putters. And they're like, wow, we're going to maybe do something. Maybe you come show us what we're doing. And so we collaborated on building a putter fitting system. And then I kept, passionately wanting to keep improving it and changing things. And they were basically saying, this isn't a big deal to us. We want to focus on what we do well. And they said, go knock yourself out, Dave. Go build putters the way you want to build them. And that's where I created my first fitting system, and really took it to that next level of understanding and flexibility, and super proud of it. I mean, it's still a benchmark in the industry.
I want to bounce back there, but when did making putters and doing this become your job, your livelihood, your career? At what point did that happen in this journey?
Well, it's funny because, I was supplemented by my family business, with me working in the hotel business, and I was basically taking my earnings from that, subsidizing making putters. So I went years without really making any money. I hired a really good machinist, and it was just the two of us in a building I built. It was like a 25 by 30 building, and we worked out of that with, I think it was like working in a submarine. We had 3 big milling machines in there, knee mills like what we have behind us, lathes and welders and workbenches, and it was pretty cool. There was so much going on in that little building, and it was incredible the amount of growth I learned as a metal worker. Finally having, it was one thing to say I can design it or whatever, and then I had people make it. I learned and taught myself to be a machine worker. A machinist is a very strong term, but I'm actually pretty good at it. Making things out of metal, and I have a spatial mind, so I see things in my mind before I can and I'm not worried. I just go make it. A lot of the things I make, I don't even draw a plan. I just see it in my head and I make it. And if I had to make 5 in a row, I probably, based on that mentality, it would be difficult. But I can bang one of them out and say, okay, this is what we're going to do, and then go to CAD drawings and do, make it on a CNC machine or a computer milling machine. But I just love working with my hands, making things. I got so many scars. My hands are so destroyed from, cuts, and I've lost so many fingernails, and
I haven't lost a finger yet.
I haven't lost a finger almost a
thing.
few times. Bandsaw it the other day, really good. But anyway, yeah, there's blood and some sweat and some tears in some of my putters, but I love it.
So that was like, you're getting started. There's 2 of you in this building making putters. You're going out and finding people to buy them. Yeah. The shift with the fitting system, let's get back to that. When did that happen? Like, what was that?
Well, we built it with Henry Griffiths back in early '98.
So that was really quick. Really quickly, you were like, "Hey, we need to figure this out."
Yeah, I mean, it's once the AIM scenario showed up in our consciousness, in mine, it was like, wow, what are the variables that do that, and how do we go about, making that change happen? And in 2002, I created my fitting system that I have now that has interchangeable face plates. I took my line template patent, created patents on removable face plates, removable hosels, with cams and things like that. So I created what was a very fast way to fit, right? Because you can make something that's so hard to fit, takes you forever just messing with wrenches and screws, that I created something that a person could fit very quickly with, and which made it, time is money, and if you got not just me but everybody else fitting, being able to fit faster, then people would want to do it, I would hope. And
well, I assume when you did that, like, now getting fit for a driver irons it seems pretty normal at this, but it's taken a long time to get here, right? So back then, that was not normal. I imagine getting fit for putters had to be
difficult. One, you have to have a good fitting system. 2, you have to have a good product, and 3, you have to have a well-trained fitting force, because you want your experience to be as good. I endeavor to make everybody that works with me as good as me, right? That I give them all the knowledge they need to be just a mini-me out there, where they have the knowledge to say, wow, I can go through this fit, and when someone walks away, they got an expert fit. That's what I endeavor to do. And it's all about information. It's all about quality information, quality products, quality fitting process. So a lot of companies, that fitting is maybe anti-sales, because Next thing you know, the fitting process or the fitter wasn't very good. Now the fitter's taking responsibility for it. The company has to take responsibility for a bad fitting. So they'd rather have the consumer buy the product than make their own mistake. That's been done in putting. Let's move away from that. Let's make it to where they have somebody helping them in an expert way. So that's what I think I've accomplished. And what we do is the benchmark for putter work, in my opinion.
How did you know that your fitting system worked? Like, was there a moment when maybe you were fitting someone, or was it yourself personally of like, it was like, whoa, this is great? Yeah,
I mean, from the beginning, I knew that it made a difference. But it wasn't until 2006 we did the Better Golf Through Technology Summit at MIT, and I was like, okay, we're going to do a study, and we're going to see what is actually going on here. And I thought, wow, if I come back and I'm selling sugar pills or placebo, I probably was going to quit, because I was going through, a lot. I was putting a lot on the line for, if what I was doing wasn't working or wasn't valid, that I would actually just kind of say, hey, it's not my, I'm going to go and do something else. And I did the study. And then they made me redo the study, and confused me. And I thought, wow, what did I do wrong or whatever? They said, no, we just need you to redo. We can't tell you. We don't want to. This is the protocol. Just make a smaller sample size, do the study. And I thought, wow, I just spent like a month doing the study. And it was a lot of work. Doing studies is not easy, right? You have to be very fastidious. So I redid this micro little study, and then they said, what came back was that there was a 38% reduction in deviation in 19 of the 21 metrics that we had studied. That they thought that it was such a radical amount of change that I had done something to skew it. And I had done exactly what they wanted me to do. And what it came out is that the fitting process works, and it's huge. And if you give a human being the right tools, they're going to do great things with it, much better things. So, I left that. I presented that at MIT at the summit, which there were a lot of heavy hitters there in all categories of instruction and what have you. And I thought I presented something that really kind of blew the industry out of the water at the time. So it gave me a lot of, I know I'm doing the right thing. I just got to get people to understand it, that they're really unique, and all their problems are solvable, and all that frustration and all that, hard work to hit a golf ball to a green and do everything right and then get up 5 feet away and, stink, is not something people have to go through, right? It's putting is difficult, but it's not that difficult, right? There's a lot goes into it, and that's what I want to do with these podcasts. That's what I want to do with sharing this information, where before I didn't really want to share, I didn't, and I don't want to say it in the wrong way. I didn't want to get this information out to people that didn't deserve it. I've done 24 years to get to this point, and then I go out and open this dialogue up and share my secrets to the general public, and then who do I help? I end up helping the designer at one of these bigger OEMs. I help that young guy that wants to become a club maker, and he can go through. He can bypass the 24 years of my learning curve, and but that's a risk I'm going to take. It's like I think people deserve it.
You're building something bigger than yourself, right? By this methodology and the fitting process, because you're creating putters for performance instead of for beauty or aesthetics necessarily, right? Which I think is so funny, because you're a craftsman, right? You make beautiful, whether it's watches or whatever it is, yet your putters, that's not the goal. In fact, it's for performance. So it's funny, that kind of dichotomy between the two.
There's a lot of things when you're my designs I wasn't focused so much on making everything blend and shape, because it's really hard to do. If you do that, your putters become, anybody can do that if you're making 500 of the same thing. Well, I'm making I have a billion possible permutations in that first fitting system I had, and you can't do round shapes that are off-centered and things, because you put them in a vise and they want to squirt out, right? They're like watermelon seeds, and they're hard to fixture, and it would have been daunting to maybe follow in the lines of what some of these cosmetic designers, I call them cosmetic designers because they make cosmetically pretty putters. I make a functional putter. I make shapes, I make hosels, I make offsets, I put them together. You might look at it and say, wow, that other brand or that other maker's stuff looks smoother, soapier, right? Mine's a little more harder looking and maybe here and there. But mine, when you put them down, they aim. Mine, they weigh a certain thing, right? Or they weigh a certain amount of weight that allows you to control touch. So, I never really, went after trying to be the most aesthetically pretty putter. Mine was, I went into it to make the most functional putter that's out there, configured in the right way.
So you got started in your hometown in Oregon, where you're at, in a shop with you and a machinist. Tell us kind of the evolution, because we're sitting in Austin, Texas now. You have a huge shop with, over a dozen employees. Like, how do we get here?
Well, I knew that for me, I love the Oregon coast. It's a beautiful place, but it rains a lot and it's really hard. Where I was living, it was taking me 4 hours just to get to the airport. I'd have to go all the way to Portland, because if I didn't go to Portland, I'd drive to Eugene, and then I would have to take a flight to Portland or somewhere to triage from. So I knew I wanted to be in the center of the country, and my first account was Chuck Cook out of Barton Creek, and it was I got to get around this town and get the vibe of Austin back in the early 2002, and I was like, wow, I want to move to Texas. I like Texas. I like the weather. I didn't really know about the heat, but I thought Texas would be a great place to put up my shop, and I thought, it'd be in Fort Worth or Dallas or something. And then I came across a Alster McKenzie routing that had never been done. I bought it from a really neat family in Argentina, and my goal was to take that original plan that had never been executed. It was just hanging on a fireplace. They never built the course, and it was a 9 double green 18-hole routing, which is pretty cool, by Alster McKenzie. And I found a partnership group that owned a piece of land here in Liberty Hill, of all places. And they said, hey, would you be interested in Austin, Texas? I was like, yeah. So we moved our original, from Oregon, we moved to this property had 3 airplane hangars, had an airstrip, and we were going to build our golf course there, just right outside of Liberty Hill here. That never happened. It was a bad time, 2008, 9. Nobody was building golf courses, and we fell victim to it. But I got to Texas, so then, it wasn't feasible. Something happened with the property, and we had to move out. So we moved out here to Liberty Hill, and been here ever since. So it's nice. It's a little bit out of town, from Austin, but it's we're in the nice part of where you want to live, where you don't have to fight traffic, and everything you need is close by, but you don't have to deal with all that craziness.
So we kind of look at your evolution with kind of the products that have come out over these last 20 years, I guess. You've seen your torque balance putters. The wedge fitting that you've done is really cool. You've got the single length. Of these projects that you've been working on in the past, like looking back, what are you most proud of, or what most exciting is the putters right away?
I'd say putting. It's where I've really showed a really unique platform. I'm very proud of the wedge stuff. It's not like that was as new and cutting edge, even though the bounce and us talking about bounce and center gravities and things that a lot of designers hadn't talked about until now. I think we were kind of on the forefront of that. And then I'd say single length is pretty cool, because with me working with Bryson DeChambeau, I've been making him putters since he was 11. So I wouldn't have had the opportunity to work with Bryson on single length if I hadn't known him since he was a kid. So the single length is pretty cool. To me, it's a game changer, just like the putting is. I believe in it wholeheartedly. And Bryson's proved that it can be done at a high level, and I'm seeing young girls winning AJGA events. It's hard for me, I always get stuck on that one. and accomplishing things from seniors to improving to just normal golfers. So I really think it's a huge market segment that we have a chance to make a big change in. Is the iron segment. We've been doing things the same way forever, even though Bobby Jones won the Grand Slam with single length. Pretty interesting how we're coming right back to the beginning.
And this is a leading question because I know the answer, but what's the next big thing on that journey of big products or big things that are coming out for you guys?
Products, to me it's more about, once you've developed something that's groundbreaking and you're not going to have a lot of these massive game-changing scenarios. I think the holy grail is how do you integrate it, right? How do you create an integrated process so that someone gets involved and they said, so it's not just, hey, I sold you a putter, see you later, right? I help guide that person to the end result of what they want, which is to putt better. So it's instruction. It's, matching what they need versus what with the technique. It's making a product for them that matches the instruction, that matches who they are and how they perceive things. I think that's really the genesis of what I've accomplished is, we'll keep coming up with different designs that, will allow this to happen. But from a core element, I don't know if I got another crazy idea up my sleeve. I might, I have no idea. But what I do know is that I can help people integrate this process better. And I still have a lot of people that don't know anything about it. And I have a lot of golf professionals that are still not on board. And I believe I have a great opportunity to educate people about what's going on. And then they can make their decisions whether they think I'm, full of crap or the ideas that I have are, actually really valid and worthy of, implementing into their instructional arsenal. So, I just think there's so much of an opportunity here to educate and integrate this whole process together.
Why now? Why are you starting down this path of sharing everything that you've learned now?
Well, I got a new partner. I got a new lease on life when it comes to developing and implementing this stuff. It's very difficult. I've been that lead goose in the V, just plowing through and taking all the hits and financial hits and all the other things that go along with developing a product. And, nobody's ever done what I've done. They can say nobody's ever built a fitting model like we have, and nobody's ever manufactured putters the way we have and created wedges the way we have and single length irons. So, we've been, on the forefront of, and it's a lot of work. So it's like, how do we now in this world of sharing information, right, get this out to where people will actually look and say, hang on, these guys are really good at what they do. And they do it for the right reasons. And boy, they're pretty darn smart. And so why not now? Better late than never.
Absolutely. You mentioned some of the challenges of being on this path of, being an innovator and trying to innovate. Like, what are some of the challenges that you've had to go through over this journey?
The challenges is, just getting in the door. You go to golf clubs and there's a lot of bias in golf clubs with, branding, staffing. So you can't even sometimes get in the door with some of these facilities because they've never heard your name. Not having any presence, even though you could be maybe the best at what you do, doesn't mean that they're going to let you in and do it, right? So very territorial industry. But, things are softening up because, a lot of them are just kind of like, hey, I don't make any money on the hard goods. It's a pain in the butt. Yeah, if you can come in and do a better job for us, then, yeah, come on in. Because now it's about this experience that people have. And if there's the confidence in knowing that you're going to do a good job, they're going to let you in. So that's been a big barrier is fighting the, what I consider minutia by my competitors they try to sell an insert, or they try to sell something that I'm like, that's not improving people, right? But it becomes the latest and greatest, and colors should not be technology. It's like, hey, we're going to bank on a color for this whole next, couple year cycle, and to me, I don't find that very substantive. But yeah, it's financial. It's difficult. Overhead kills you. Staying in the game long enough to do it has been a real struggle. It's not an easy business. It's not like you're making windfall return on everything that you sell. We're just making margins like everybody else. So, it's a tough business. And I think if people knew how hard small companies like us work to do a great job and meet the financial needs that we have, they'd have a little more respect and want to help the little guy out a little bit. And we're a big guy and we're a little guy. So big ideas, little company. So yeah, I guess that's kind of, hope that answers your question.
Worth it?
Oh yeah, I mean,
what makes it worth it?
If I died tomorrow, I'd say, I did it my way. I did it the right way. I have no regrets other than, I wish I would have done this and at this time done that. Those are the only regrets I have. They're more like, oh, we shouldn't have hired this person, or we shouldn't have, certain things that internally. But when it comes to the external part of, what I've accomplished, oh man, it's totally worth it. And, someday I'd hope to be, thought of in that light, even if we cease to exist tomorrow, that people would say, wow, that Edel was the first company that really did that. I would take a lot of pride in that. I'd like to be, I collect golf clubs, and I love the old names like Phillip and Forgan and Tom Morris, and on to being considered like a Wilson, and on to McGregor and those companies. I'd love to be an iconic stalwart brand that people go, wow, those guys really did it right. I would take a lot of pride in that.
It's fun to hear some of the journey. I'm sure there are so many stories along the past 25 years, which we're going to hear some of them.
Yeah,
that's the good news. This podcast is gonna continue on. The first series, you're going to talk about putting, and dive into a lot of details there. We've got information, answering questions from everyone that's listening, sitting down with whether it's a tour player or an instructor, or just somebody that's in the studio getting fit. Just hear kind of their experiences with putting and whatnot, because there's just so much to talk about that it's time to start the conversation.
And it may seem repetitive, but repetition's good, and inside of it, there's going to be a gem always coming out of a fitting. That it's not. What I want over time is that it's not just, hey, we're going to talk about aim. It's like, how does that all integrate into the whole scenario? How do you see what I see? When a person comes in and says, okay, this is my problem, and I can look through the whole thing and kind of organize it and go, well, I can see where they came from, and then I know how to help change them. I mean, that's what I would love people to see, is that their own personal growth out of it. I'm really excited that someone's going to help them in this process, because quite honestly, the industry doesn't want it. Teachers want to make money off of teaching, which I get. I was one of those. And golf club companies want to make money off of selling you putters all the time. So they really don't want you to have a putter that lasts all the, they don't want it to be a 2-year product in your bag. They want you to buy another one of their putters. I was told that by them. So, and I get it. That's what they got to do. That's their business model, but it's not mine. Mine's, I would hope if you bought my putter, you don't need another putter, and you're going to want wedges and you're going to want irons, right? So, and then once you're done with that, hopefully your friends will get it and your family will get it, and there's a lot of golfers out there. I don't need to be the biggest company. I just want to be the darn best one. I want to be the best golf club company from woods, not from the woods, but from the irons on down through the rest of your bag. I want to be the 12 club company in your bag for the right reasons.
That is a great place to end this. you'll be back. Next week, people should subscribe, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening or watching. If you want to watch us over on YouTube, you can join us here in the Edel shop. But this has been so much fun. I'm excited to hear this journey that you're going to take us on. It's going to be great. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Coach.